Revenge of the Sith was and is regarded by most to be the best Star Wars prequel. What many fans don't know is that the original cut of this film was actually over 4 hours long. While we unfortunately probably won't ever see this version in full, we do know a lot about the scenes that were cut. Today, we're going to be analyzing almost all of the scenes and ideas that were in the script but never made it into the final film. This isn't going to include scrapped concepts such as a young Han Solo being raised among Wookiees or pretty much anything else that didn't make it past early development. Let's get into it. Many of the scrapped scenes actually come from the sequence in which Obi-Wan and Anakin rescue Palpatine. This part of the film was originally over an hour long and included some pretty strange scenes. Here's one of them, for example.
It's broken. Can you understand what he's saying?
I'm not a protocol droid.
I'm pretty sure that beep is down.
I sense Count Dooku is above us.
Oh, yes, you're right. Beep is up. I think. Anyway, I agree. Up it is.
For the most part, it was good that it was cut, as it does get very repetitive and kinda goofy. But one of the more cool scenes is when General Grievous murders Jedi Master Shaak Ti. It's still pretty unnecessary, however, and just makes it so that Anakin and Obi-Wan have to spend more time sneaking around General Grievous's command ship. There was no real purpose of keeping it in the film, and removing it helped with the pacing, so I'm happy they decided to scrap it. Now, most of the cut ideas from the middle of the movie are basically a compilation of what people disliked about the prequels. It's nothing but politics, and that would have just pissed off the already disappointed fans. On another note, however, these concepts would have began to bridge the gap between episodes 3 and 4, because it's all about planting the seeds of rebellion. There's deleted scenes with Bail Organa, Padme, and Mon Mothma all discussing the idea of removing the Chancellor from office. Then there's the same type of scene with Yoda, Mace, and Obi-Wan doing the same. And like I said earlier, these things do start to get very repetitive and pointless, so it's good they were removed in my opinion. But around now is where a lot of interesting things began to get cut. So if you've read the 2017 Vader comics, you might remember the issue where Vader walks through a portal and into another realm of the Force. You see a lot of moments of Vader's life, but most importantly is his conception, where we actually see Palpatine manipulating the midichlorians inside Shmi's womb. This idea was originally in the script of Episode 3. It reads, "On Coruscant, Palpatine completes his seduction of Anakin, who at first refuses to go over to the dark side, until the Chancellor makes a startling confession. I have waited all these years for you to fulfill your destiny. I arranged for your conception. I used the power of the Force to will the midichlorians to start the cell divisions that created you. I don't believe you. Ah, but you know it's true. When you clear your mind, you will sense the truth. You could almost think of me as your father. That's impossible. Nevertheless, you must decide." So, if they stuck with the original script, we would have found out what we found out anyway in the Vader comics. It's in canon now, so it doesn't really matter. Perhaps in the film it would have seemed out of place, but it did fit very well into the comic series, which is a very interesting series by the way, so I recommend checking it out. Now, if you remember in Revenge of the Sith, there's the scene where Yoda says goodbye to Tarful and Chewbacca. It was a somewhat emotional scene, which seemed kind of odd. The reason for this is because most of the Kashyyyk scenes were actually cut. Along with an extended Battle of Kashyyyk, one such deletion was a potentially great scene which detailed Yoda's struggle to get off the planet. Prior to reaching the escape pod, Yoda, Chewie, and Tarful ran into some clones amidst the aftermath of Order 66. They dealt with the problem, and then the Wookiees escaped using a stolen AT-ST, while Yoda came along atop a giant flying insect. This short action sequence would have helped flesh out Yoda's time with the Wookiees, which would have made the farewell sequence fit in a lot better and just make a little more sense. Speaking of Order 66, there was an extended version of that scene that was cut. It featured the deaths of some other Jedi such as Barriss and Luminara. But one of the more significant extensions takes place after Obi-Wan is shot down by his troops. He would then have to evade a Nos monster in the depths of Udapau and just sneak around for a bit. This was all included in the Revenge of the Sith novelization though, and it really isn't that important to the story. But after meeting back up with Yoda and trying to get into the Jedi Temple, there was a scrapped idea in which a bunch of clones disguised themselves as Jedi. It's pretty much no different than the action sequence that we already got, so there really was no point anyway. But the next really cool idea that was cut takes place on Mustafar, when Padme first finds her husband. In the original drafts, Padme was supposed to bring a knife with her with the intent of killing Anakin. However, she would be unable to pull herself to do it, and this is when Obi-Wan would appear and the rest of the scene would play out as normal, with the epic duel to follow. Although this seems more consistent with the Padme we know from episodes 1 and 2, I personally like the scene that we got a lot better. The rest of the duel plays out pretty much the same. The only exception is a concept which I don't think even made it into the script, where Obi-Wan and Anakin would briefly take a break from killing each other to unite against a nightmarish beast. This really would have ruined the pacing of the duel, so I'm really glad it never made it to the final cut, but one of the things I do wish made it occurs as Anakin is actually burning. In the script, Anakin was supposed to scream out the words, "Save me," to Obi-Wan. I feel like this would have made that scene even more emotional than it already was, and I just wish they really didn't decide to cut it. Then, after all of this, towards the end of the film, we see Yoda meditating, but originally he was actually supposed to be speaking to Qui-Gon. Unfortunately, Liam Neeson never returned to record the lines, so it didn't make it into the film. Here's my edit of how it probably would have ended up playing out.
Yoda, my old friend, you have come at last.
Qui-Gon Jinn. Really you? It is?
It is.
How are you here?
I am a manifestation of the Force. A force that consists of two parts. Living beings generate the living force, which in turn powers the wellspring that is the cosmic force.
Show yourself. Can you?
I cannot. My training was incomplete. All energy from the living force, from all things that have ever lived, feeds into the cosmic force, binding everything and communicating to us through the midichlorians. Because of this, I can speak to you now.
See the future. You can.
I exist where there is no future or past. There can be many outcomes, but your path is clear, Yoda. You have been chosen, as I was before you.
For what chosen am I?
You will learn to preserve your life force, and so manifest a consciousness which will allow you to commune with the living after death.
How?
Dark times are ahead, and forces of light must remain. This is the path of only a few Jedi. You will travel to one of the origins of all life in the galaxy.
This place is where?
The Force will be your guide. Goodbye, my friend.
Excuse me, Master Yoda. Obi-Wan Kenobi has made contact.
And then after this, there's also a short clip where Yoda would have been shown arriving on the planet Dagobah. All of this would have been pretty cool to see in the film, but we pretty much got these same concepts built into the Clone Wars series. That's sort of a recurring thing when it comes to these deleted ideas, in that they often show up in canon through comics, books, and shows. So even though we don't see them in Revenge of the Sith, the ideas do exist elsewhere. Aside from those major cuts, there are a few minor things which are pretty irrelevant and just extensions of scenes that we already know. For example, during the duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin, it shows why at one point Anakin is missing his lightsaber. Basically, Obi-Wan took it and is using both of them. Then there's a scene in which the Naboo star skiff is shown flying off Mustafar and heading towards Paulus Massa. And lastly, there's also an extended Separatist slaughter which shows Wat Tambor being killed by Anakin. Most of the ideas just were pretty unnecessary and didn't have to be in the film. Revenge of the Sith is a good film with what it has, and I'm happy about that. Let me know which scenes and ideas you wish were kept in the movie, and which ones you're glad were scrapped. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. May the Force be with you.